I'm Matt.
Hey, I'm Steve.
Hey, I'm John.
This is the Sober Friends Podcast. We're here for the sober curious, the new guy, and the old timer. We're here to talk about the stuff anyone looking to live alcohol-free has to face day to day, and how we overcame those struggles. We speak for no 12-step group, but we do try to remain anonymous. You're not alone. This is the Sober Friends Podcast. All right, what does everybody think of when they think of a 12-step group? They think of the God thing, a power greater than ourselves, and then they also think of one day at a time. It's got to be one of the most well-known phrases in 12-step groups, Steve. Got to be.
Got to be, especially our 12-step group. There's a lot of sayings in our group in AA, but that is probably the biggest and maybe the most significant one that not only we say, but we try to live by.
I wouldn't say most of them. A lot of the phrases, I could take it or leave it.
Right.
This is not one of them. And we had Tim Phillips on some time back, and he struggled because he left AA after 5 years, and he struggled a little bit with the one day at a time that I always have to be on guard every single day. And I think there is something to be said for that when you're new, but I'm not thinking of, I just want to get through the day today without a drink. I think I got that under control. I also think one day at a time means a lot more in this world, and I think that's worth us discussing today. That's going to help the next sick and suffering alcoholic. So I think we can break down first, if you're brand new, what does it mean one day at a time? How would you explain it if you're a newcomer and saying, oh my God, I have to stop drinking and I can't do this the rest of my life? What am I going to do? What would you say to them when you're explaining one day at a time?
Well, I would tell them that for me, when I look at it is a couple things. One is, if I'm worried about yesterday, to me it's wasted time, right? I mean, I can't fix that. I can't fix yesterday. I can do some work on it. I can do some other things, but I can't fix it. And the same thing about tomorrow. And I talk about this with a couple friends who have anxiety and stuff. If I'm thinking about tomorrow, then again, it may not be wasted time because maybe I could do something about what's going to happen. But the other thing that happens is I'm not in the moment, right? I'm not there today. And I struggled with that. It was a big problem for me. Like, always worried about everything except for exactly what was going on. So when I think about one day at a time, it's not even that. That's the way I talk about it today, and I think about it today, is being in the moment and being available. And it's one of the things that I talk about. Like you, I don't worry about. There was a time when I came in here that living one day at a time meant not drinking today.
Right.
That's all it meant. Get through today without drinking. That newcomer, that white knuckle that we all went through, and that's what people don't understand when you come into recovery. Like, those first few days, there's very little anyone else could do for you. I mean, you do have to. You can have a program, you can have a sponsor, you go to meetings, but for many of us, you are going to want to drink really, really bad because 2 or 3 days before that, you wanted to drink and you did. So you have to just white knuckle it through that. Unless you're in a treatment facility, totally different story. I was never there. I can't relate to how that works. If you were, then there's a different story there. So I don't mean that anymore. I do mean trying to be in the moment, trying to live for today, worried about what can I do today to make today a better day.
I think if you're many years on and you're still espousing, we'll just get through today, it's a little literal. I think you have to bracket the goal down small when you start. And this is really the brilliance of one day at a time. And it's one of the things that really hung me up. I was a wine snob. I identified as a wine connoisseur. So the idea that I had to give up this identity as a wine drinker, there was a lot of that prevented me from giving up alcohol because I'm giving up my identity. And if I'm thinking ahead of, I'm not going to go to a marriage, I'm not going to go to a wedding ceremony without booze, I'm not going to go on vacation without booze, I'm not going to go to the beach without booze, I'm going to get stuck in my own head. If I can think through, let's get through today. Let's just think about today. It shortens the goal. And I was going to be a smartass when you were talking about don't think about tomorrow. Oh, so I don't have to do any planning for tomorrow. No, that's still one day at a time. There are times that I log on at work and spend an hour or two planning my calendar. That's not being in the future. I'm setting myself up for when I have tomorrow, I can be successful without spinning my wheels. Do your planning today for the stuff later on.
Yeah, we have to plan for the future, right? I mean, we just live in a society where we have to do our planning, whether it's work, whether it's family, whether it's events. That's not what we're talking about, right? And again, we're not talking about that you can't do anything and think about future things. It's really about sitting in a bad spot worrying about that, worrying about, what's going to happen. And, we talk about our friend Mike on here a lot. Mm-hmm. And Mike has a lot of anxiety, and he struggles with that. And I ride with Mike a lot. He doesn't drive, so I give him rides to appointments and stuff. So we do a lot of talking. We talk a lot, and I try to help him best I can. And Mike is one of those people who worries always about what if, right? Mm-hmm. And I relate to that because I had it too. But one of the beauties of this program for me is we talk about the promises, and when I work this program properly and fully, some of those promises came true. And one of them was that I stopped worrying as much. I stopped worrying about the past. And here's the other thing I think for me, which is really important. If I live one day at a time, if I'm living in the moment, if I'm paying attention to what's going on, I'm less likely to make bad decisions, right? I'm less likely to have bad stuff to clean up, where I wake up tomorrow and go, I got regrets because I made a mess of it. Not that I don't on occasion. I do. I'm not perfect. I certainly have days where I mess up and I have regrets and I have amends to make and all those type of things. But if I'm living a day at a time, if I'm living in the moment, then, I don't have to worry about doing that as often.
Paul Gauci is a gardener out in Washington State that I found many, many years ago, and he's kind of how I do my gardening. He does Back to Eden gardening, and he talks about gardening in a way that God talks to him. And one of the things that I picked up with him is, I don't remember how he said it, but he said it in such a way of, if you put in effort at first, it's a lot of work. If you do it well, you don't have to put that effort later on. And I look at that of the effort you need to put in early in recovery. This might be one of those areas where people don't stay sober at first. Not saying that the program doesn't work or that you're not doing it right. But you really have to commit to, I have to work really hard and put a lot of effort in. And that could be really, really painful at first. It's, if you're going in and you're going to dig up the soil, that's going to take a lot of backbreaking work. But if you do that one time, or in my case, not digging up the soil, but if I have to go get my wood chips and cover the ground, that's going to take a lot of work at first. And once it's done, it's done. Then I just have to maintain it. So it's What are the things I need to do up front today that I won't have to do that work later on, so it becomes easy.
Just to stick on that gardening thing for a moment. I know you're a big gardener. You inspired me a while back to start doing some of that. I didn't take to it like you did, but I took part of my garden and I put in some blueberry plants. Now, blueberry plants take a while to mature before they really start producing fruit. And this is the third season that I've had them. And they'd always produce a little bit of fruit, but not a lot. And this season was the first time that they had a fair amount of fruit. One of the other things I did is they want a very acidic soil, blueberries. And I bought a tester last year, and I tested my soil this year on it, and I realized my soils are wrong. So like you said, one of the things I need to do is start working to change my soil. It's going to take work. It's going to take some time to get that done. But in the future, what it'll do is it'll pay dividends, and my blueberry bushes will grow and produce more fruit. And this is, we're recording this the day after 4th of July, the 5th of July. And, I had grandkids over this week, and I planted these for my grandkids. Yeah, we always come up in July, and, my one 18, 19-month-old grandson. He came up, and I have older ones too. And we went out there, and literally this kid would just pick them off the bushes and eat them right there. Like there was no picking them and bringing them in the house. Like he was just picking them and eating. And that's what I do it for. And like I said, so when I think back about my early sobriety, man, I had to work really, really hard. And I don't have that urgency today, but it doesn't mean I work any less hard. And I mean that honestly, right? I mean, I still do a lot of work. I do different work now. My service commitments are different. Everything's just a little bit different, but I still do it. And I don't worry about it, because it really is, We talked a little bit about when we first started, before we came on the show, is I'm sort of semi-retired. I work for a company out of Canada. My boss is Muslim. When I took this job, I went up to Canada, and I spent a few days up there, and I told him that I was in recovery. I wanted him to know, right? I told him I was in recovery. I told him I had a problem. I think he gets it a little bit because he's not a really strict Muslim, but he certainly doesn't understand AA. And anyway, I had a Zoom call with him, and when I shut off my video on my Zoom, my background is a picture of a chip that says one day at a time. And it was interesting when you brought up this subject. I said my boss saw that before I turned on my video feed, and he goes, "Oh, I like that, one day at a time." And I was able to tell him, and this just happened yesterday. I live actually Monday. I live my life one day at a time. And so anyway, so it's a really important to me to do that. It's important to me for not to get too ahead of myself. It helps me in a lot of things in an aspect of my life.
Work can get me worked up, the wreckage of the future. I think the opposite of one day at a time is the wreckage of the future, as opposed to the wreckage of the past. Because I start thinking about, I'm not happy where I am in my career, and I'm blocked, and I'm not where I want to be, and are they cutting back? Am I going to lose my job? If I stay in today, I'm a lot better. And what that means to me is today, what can I control? I'm not going to worry about the future. I'm not going to worry about a career thing later on. No, today, here's what I'm going to worry about. What are the steps I need to take today to get to my goals tomorrow? That's what I can control. Right. It's not, I'm going to deny the future, because that's a risk, and that's a risk that I've taken. Well, I'm not going to worry about that. That's just worry. No, it's, okay, well, what do you want to accomplish? And if you're worried about accomplishing something in the future, what are those steps you need to take today? Right. Who do I have to pick up the phone and have a conversation with, and maybe develop a mentor relationship with? I can do that today. That will bear fruit tomorrow, but I'll worry about that tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that I should do today what I can do today, right? And not put it off. And that was a great one for putting stuff off, especially if there's something uncomfortable for me to do, something I don't want to do. I could put it off forever. One of the things I was always in awe of my wife. My wife was a supervisor of 11 school nurses, women, and my wife would have to do unpleasant things as a supervisor, right? And I was always in awe how she would she would never delay it. It was like, I got to go in and do this. She would tell me what she's got to do sometimes. And we, just to have somebody to vent over or whatever. And she'd go in and do it. And I always used to think like, wow, I would have avoided trying to do that forever, So what I believe today is I should do it if I can. I want to go back and talk. When I came back from my relapse in 2000, I came back in 2010, and in 2011, I had this weird series of doctor's appointments where they saw a speck in my eye, and one thing led to another, and it was really interesting how it went. I just went have my eyes tested. I hadn't had them tested in a while. I never wore glasses. The optometrist saw a speck in my eye. He sent me to a retina specialist. The retina specialist diagnosed it as a tumor. He sent me down to Yale. They diagnosed it as a malignant cancerous tumor. And through this whole process, now I was newly sober, but through this whole process, what I did was live a day at a time. Because my wife would say to me, as we went through all of the appointments, she'd like, "Oh, you must be crazy. Like, you must be crazy inside." And I said, "No, I'm not." And I remember when I was told that I had a tumor by the second doctor, and they said, "Well, we're going to send you down to see an ocular oncologist." And I'm like, "What?" Right? And when we were heading down there, my wife said, "You must be nervous." And I'm like, "You know something, honey? I'm going to this appointment, and I'm not going any farther in my head than this appointment. I don't know what he's going to tell me." Right? And when I got there, he told me, and it needed some surgery, some radiation, all that kind of stuff. And I dealt with it at that moment. And I went from one appointment to the next. I went from one procedure to the next. And it was the time that I realized I never let myself get crazy over it, because I just lived in the moment. And like, I could have worried like crazy. Oh, what's going to happen? What, am I going to lose the sight in that eye? All this type of things. It would have done me no good. So I took it a day at a time. A lot of those things happened, right? I lost sight in that eye. A lot of those things happened. But I'm going to tell you something. I never spent the day worrying about them because I knew I had no control over that.
Yeah, this also comes into what's in your circle of control.
Right.
What is in your circle of influence? What do you have no control over? And I could take it to that next logical step. You could lose sight in an eye.
Mm-hmm.
So the next step is, what happens? I'll worry about that. If it comes to the point where I lose sight in one eye, what would be my next step? How would I get around that?
Right.
There would be something that you would do.
There is. And know what that is? Wear glasses. And I mean that. It's like my surgeon used to scream at me. I never wore glasses my whole life. So and what happened was, my vision was great for the first 3 to 5 years after that. And then it slowly I won't get into it all, but I slowly started to lose it because of the radiation. And he used to tell me, you got to protect your good eye, not your bad eye. Your bad eye is going to be your bad eye. You got to protect your good eye. And I listened to him sometimes. I didn't. I did, and then I realized, oh yeah, I got to protect that good eye, because if I lose sight in that good eye, then I'm blind.
Right.
So there are some things I could do about it, and as time went on, I took better care of it. I didn't pay attention to it right away, but I took better care of it, and because I had to. Right? I had to. And now today I'm very much, first of all, today I need to wear my glasses because I can't see without them. But I'm faithful to them. I'm making sure if I'm doing anything, I always have eye protection on, because I am in control of that,
I never thought of it that way, but that's a different way to look at it, of you do have a good eye, do everything you can do to protect that.
I didn't understand it when he first told me that. Like, well, yeah. I'm like, yeah. Especially because I could still see out of my other eye. So, but yeah, it was, and now, like I said, now I can. And listen, my wife just went through she had a really, really bad case of migraines, which I've never seen her have anything like that. And they went on for a while. And they went on for long enough that they did some scans and stuff like that. And those are all the type of things that you worry about, right? And we, her son was up, and it's like, yeah, you got to wait. You gotta go for one of those brain scans to make sure there's nothing else going on except for a migraine, and there's always a little bit of holding your breath during that time. I'm a guy half full. I'm a glass half full guy, right? I'm an optimist by nature. I figure there's always a silver lining to everything, so I don't worry about those things. But my wife's not like that. She gets nervous. She gets anxious, and so it's been a tough. I mean, that went on early June, and she's finally starting to come around now. But it's been a long haul. And again, you got to worry about those things. You got to take care of them, and you got to do what's in your control.
One of those things that I'm hearing there is you've got to take care of your health.
Yeah,
you got to listen to your body. I'm a migraine sufferer.
Okay,
I have had them for decades now, and they suck. And a lot of times, you have a migraine because they've ruled out everything else. Migraine is sort of like this catch-all for,
right.
We don't know what else it is, but your brain looks fine.
Yeah.
And they're very painful, and you kind of learn how to handle them.
Yeah.
If you haven't had them your whole life and they come on, I can imagine that being scary. That's not been I just live with them.
Right. No, she had them earlier in life, before we met, and I think, like I said, I think she mentioned it once. And I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of migraines, but anyway, and apparently, but this is the first time that she had one for literally was sick for 2 weeks, right, with a migraine and
Yeah, that happens.
sick to her, and they do. And now I've talked to several people like yourself who had them, yeah, and they said, oh yeah, it's not unusual to have that. You hope that you don't have them that for long. And hopefully she won't get another one. She's got some medicine now that she didn't have before that could help her, hopefully if she starts to feel that way. But anyway, but you got to take care of your health. You got to do the things you can do, right? And this is the whole point. I agree. Like right now I feel a bit unhealthy, although I'm very active and all, but I need to start ramping up my health stuff. And I know, and that's all, and that is definitely within my power. It's definitely within my power to take care of myself mentally, physically, spiritually. Those are all in my power at some level, right? Depending on your physical ability, you can always do something to make yourself feel better. So I need to take care of those things. And that's living in the moment. That's taking care of, just like you said, taking care of what we need to take care of so that they don't catch up on it. Because what happens is, for me, when those things start catching up on me, it's when I start wearing down, right? And then I'm susceptible to bad choices. I'm susceptible to bad behavior. And all of that leads me to a place where I'm depressed. I'm not feeling good. And as far as the way of the drink sounds and seems to me today, it's not that far away from me. And every once in a while, lately I've been realizing that a drink is not that far away from me. And I don't know why. It's been very real that I realize, it's really not that far away from me. Like it's there. And it's there for my taking.
It's almost like if you have a cruise liner and you nick enough of those watertight compartments, you're going to sink the boat.
Right.
But you have to, if you get one nick and you can close that first door, you're good. But if it overflows that second one, and then the third one, and the fourth bulkhead, right. That's how I look at this, that you got to take care of yourself. Is that one thing that pisses me off is not going to make me drink today, but I've blown through one firewall.
Right.
How many firewalls do I have to get there to when I drink? I don't know.
Right.
At this point, it's probably quite a few.
Yeah.
Early on, maybe not. But that's where, if you're seeing anything pop up that's getting you discontented, you need to address it. Yeah. Don't let it get to the point where you've blown through 5 of the bulkheads and then the ship is going to sink.
Matt, that's a perfect thing to lead into. Another thing which I hadn't thought to till you just brought that up, but living a day at a time also means, and I mentioned it, but it means cleaning up those messes, right? And like I said, and that's what it means. Like, I need to clean that up. Because if I don't clean that up, that is one of those bulkheads that we've missed. We're letting it sink. And like you said, today we could probably get through a bunch of those and not pick up a drink. The question is, you are absolutely right. I don't know how many I can, right? And it all depends on the day, right? I mean, If you want to use the analogy, it depends on what the seas are like, right? If they're big, heavy, whipping seas, then maybe you don't need that many bulk. So it all depends on what else is going on in my life, So, listen, I'm going away to a conference, and I've been away to conferences before, and I typically don't have a problem with them because I don't do a lot of the after hour activities where the heavy drinking happens. I may do they may have a little happy hour before dinner or something. Obviously I do that. I'm in sales and marketing and stuff, so I need to do some of that smoozing. But I'm very much aware in those situations that I need to take care of what I need to take care of. And I've been in the same area in Scottsdale, Arizona. I was there in 2019 for the same conference. And the beautiful thing was I actually found 2 meetings out there. And they were like 6 a.m. meetings. And you're only there. This conference is only 2 days. But I went there and I went to 2 morning meetings, 6 a.m., nice and early. So I got them in before all of my appointments and stuff like that. And it was just a beautiful way to take care of myself and make sure that I was doing what I needed to do that day so I could get through that day. And that's the beauty of it. When you live a day at a time, you think about, oh, what can I do? What can I do to make myself, more protective from that first drink? And for me, that was to find a meeting and then go to it.
I think it's also worth looking and saying, it's easy to go and I can't do this happy hour because I'm in recovery.
Yeah.
There's only a happy hour. You don't go to a happy hour every day for the rest of your life.
Right.
It's just this one day where they have this happy hour, or today and tomorrow while I'm on this trip, this is going on. But it's very easy to think because I'm doing this, this is my new reality. As strange as that is, that's how it feels to me. Oh, I have this thing here. It's too much. No, it's just today. Then I go back to normal.
Right.
It's also worth looking at one day at a time in terms of the past. That the past is the past. And yeah, I got to clean up the wreckage of the past. But just because something happened in the past doesn't mean I have to relive that today.
Yeah.
I have a new reality today.
Yeah, no, I agree. If you clean it up, then you don't have to relive it. That's the biggest thing, right? If you clean it up, what happens, I think, for not just, and I don't think it's unique to alcoholics or addicts or anything. I think for people who don't clean up their messes, that they tend to relive them over and over, either with more anger and more resentment or regret, depending on what, how you deal with it. So to me, it's like, if I clean it up, then it's gone. Our buddy Edson says, I hate to make amends, so I don't even want to do that behavior, right? And that's how I try to live today, is like, I don't want to be cleaning up that mess, so I try not to act in a way where I don't have to clean it up. So absolutely, it's so important to focus on what we can do and how we live our lives, and just do it. And it's simple. It really is simple. It's not easy, but it's a really simple way to live. And I think that's the other thing is, for me, is that I felt like my life was so complicated before I found this program. And things seemed to be, I didn't know how to handle certain things. And today I simplify things so much that it's very easy for me most of the time to handle my business.
Simple does not equal easy.
No,
it never does. And everybody can benefit from a house cleaning and making things right and making amends, but they don't have a cookbook like we have. We need to have a cookbook and a recipe to live our lives, especially up front, because of that risk of drinking, that we have to do what we have to do not to drink, and having a plan to walk through your life so that you don't have to drink again is what's important. And in terms of the past, this is where it's a lot of work up front. It's a lot of work up front to write down all of the nasty stuff that happened and figure out why. Then talk to somebody so that person can help you figure it out. You offload it, then make those amends and make it right with that other person up front. Now, if you do all that and you've done that work up front, you just maintain it by, as you go along, fix it as it happens. Right. Think about the things that you're doing. Did that feel right? Did that not? That's a little simpler and a little easier, and it doesn't pile up. I'm just walking through like steps 4, 5, 8, right. 9, and 10.
That's it.
And, if for some reason you're a normie out there and you're listening to this, there's no reason you can't do that. And I promise it will make your life better.
It really does. Yeah, the people who do that, I can remember being all of people who sort of had figured out how to live life. And those are the people who do those things. And there are people who do them naturally. And if you don't do them, it is a good way to do it. I just want to share that, one of the things that we do in our program is like you mentioned it. We have this toolbox that we use, right? And I was listening actually to another podcast, and this was a podcast of person in recovery, and we talk about all the time. People do different recoveries, and I listen to different podcasts. People do different things. And this person was at a conference, and they drink NA beer, right? They drink non-alcoholic beer, and they talk about like, listen, some people don't like it. It's part of what I do. But this person talked about being stressed and chugging the NA beer. And he realized right away that, I'm chugging this NA beer. And said that they had never felt more like drinking, and they've been around than they did in that moment. And one of the things I picked up on it, is that they never called. Like the first thing I would have done was pick up the phone and call somebody.
I would too.
And they didn't do that, right? They went back to the room, isolated for a while till they calmed down, whatever. And again, their program, their life, they get to do those things. But I thought about it. I'm like, man, that is where you don't have to do this whole program. You don't. You can do some things. And that was the perfect thing was, and this person had a co-host. So there's at least one other person they could have called, right? And said, hey.
Yeah, but we don't want to ask for help from other people.
I feel like shit. I feel like drinking right now. What do I do? So there's things to do. Yeah. And that is living in the moment for me would be to make sure I took care of that right then and there. Make sure I understood like, oh, what's happening here? I need to take care of this now.
This is one of these things that regardless of how you got sober, if we're thinking about just for today, have a crew. Yeah. Even if it's long distance, I have people who are friends who are online friends that we text or we're Instagram messages all day, but have somebody that you can reach out to and say, I'm having a problem.
Right.
None of us want to do that. I always feel honored when somebody asks me for help. It makes me feel better that I can give advice and it's something that helps somebody else. And that's the number one thing. If you're in this position, you cannot stay sober or get sober on your own. If you can and you're happy, God bless you. I can't. I do need community. And as much of an introvert as I am, I get real energy from other people. You got to find your crew, no matter where it is, and do ask for help if you're in that situation. I'm chugging a non-alcoholic beer. You've got to reach out to somebody and say, hey, I'm feeling this way. Because what I find when I do that, it disappears. It's gone as soon as I pick up the phone.
Me too. As soon as I talk to, a lot of times, even if I just leave a message to another alcoholic, for me, again, this is me, I feel better. Like I just told somebody about it, right? Literally. I just told somebody. And the people I call, if I told them that, they'd call me back, right? They're not going to let me hang. They're going to call me back and check on me and make sure I'm okay. And that's the other beauty thing about having your crew, as you called it. I like that word, is that to know that people care about you enough to call you back and make sure you're okay. I mean, that's a huge feeling, right? It's a huge feeling. So obviously some of us have family that do that or other people, but to know that there's a whole community of people for me, that if I gave them that phone call, my phone's going to ring off the hook and I'm going to be able to talk to people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the one day at a time? How do you live one day at a time? What does it mean to you? The email is matt@soberfriendspod.com. I'd love for you to give us a follow on Instagram at soberfriendspod.com. We're coming up on a big number, and I'd like to get over that big number. It would be awesome. Steve, you were talking about another recovery podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what you listen to.
Right.
I'm hoping that you do listen to other recovery podcasts. There's tons out there of all different flavors. There's enough audience for all of us. I would love to get feedback of what is the other stuff that you listen to. I kind of want to be I have guesses, but I'd love to be surprised that it's an off-the-wall recovery show that I never would know about or guess. I'd love to know what's the other stuff that you listen to. Steve, thanks for keeping it one day at a time today.
All right, Matt. Thank you.
We'll see you all next week. Bye, everybody. You made it this far into the podcast. That tells me you're a pretty big fan. If you like what we do and you find value in the podcast, consider a donation at buymeacoffee.com/soberfriendspod. Your donation keeps us on the air to help out the new guy and helps us defray some of our costs. If you find value in our podcast, please consider a donation at buymeacoffee.com/soberfriendspod.